Hey guys, the WalterFootball.com After Dark Show for October 16, 2024. We're going to be doing the Week 7 NFL picks against the spread. Before we get an intro going, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description of the merch store. All that would be really appreciated. As you can see here, we have a 20% off on the merch store. So you can buy one of those shirts or one of the shirts I'm wearing. Not exactly this shirt, but as you can see, you have a wide variety here. So buying one of these would help a lot. And they're high quality shirts. As I said, I've had these for many years and none of them have gone bad. So that's a great way to support the show. Also, super chats, super stickers, because YouTube ads pay absolutely nothing. We had last show, we had a super chat from Germ. Before that, Slew and John Sanders. And even before that, we had Degeneron, Kevin Kovac, Ken McNeagle, Andrew Z. And I can't forget Cassandra, because Cassandra told me not to forget that. So if you guys want to really help us out, that's the best way to do it. Just really appreciate it. Also, you can go to Amazon, buy my books, Jerks to the College Years. That is my most recent book, where I made fun of people I met at Penn State, or also how the 2020 MVP was stolen. So we have an interesting show tonight. Let's intro our guest or co-host, Evan Daniel, who's on for the third week in a row. Evan, I love having you on the show. Thanks for coming on. And how was your week 6, which was a very unique week?
Week 6 was very interesting. First, thanks for having me. Appreciate the co-host or guest appearance, whichever one you like. Week 6 was one of those weird, well, I shouldn't say one of those weird weeks. It was one of the strangest weeks that I've ever seen. It's kind of, you go back to your college days when you first start betting or picking games, and hey, let me just pick the better team every single game. And, what could go wrong? My 6-year-old picks every single game, doesn't know what spreads are. We don't teach spreads here until 3rd grade. He's just in 1st grade. And he picked 13 out of 14 winners. And it's like, what analysis do you need? We don't need to talk about anything here. It's who's the better team, who's got the better quarterback, and let's just pick that team. That team is going to win.
Yep, that's all it takes. I mean, we were talking about this before we started recording. There's got to be some college kids who made 10-team parlays and bet all the favorites, and they all won. All the public teams covered, every single one. And I thought heading into Monday night, like, the public was all over Buffalo. The Sharps took the Jets. They brought the line down from 2.5 to 1. I thought, this has got to end, right? There's going to be some shady calls. The books lost so much money. We're going to see something with the Jets here, and the Jets are going to cover. But nope, of course not. The Bills win by 3. They covered the 2.5, the opening line, and then, of course, the 1. So that was absolutely brutal. And as Sue points out, the MNF officiating crew is monitoring the show. There will be already the upsetting penalties called on the two of you. That was one of the most agonizing games I've seen, because I had a big bet on the Jets. The Jets had 110 yards worth of penalties. They missed 2 field goals. They had a touchdown wiped out by a drop. They had a touchdown wiped out by penalty. And then Mike Williams slips at the end. I don't know. So many things went wrong in that game. It was just it was so brutal. I know that you suffered a bad beat on Sunday night with the Bengals Giants. So that also went the other way.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that. But, I saw a funny clip today. Somebody posted that as soon as Devontae was traded to the Jets, that there was a flag for offensive PI on Devontae Adams. Like, every play was some sort of penalty. There were more penalty yards than, it was just ridiculous to watch that. But just going back to the point on how strange the week was, it's really kind of a theme now for the season as far as favorites are concerned. I use covers.com to check them. Obviously, we track this as well. But favorites this year, and normally, and there's going to be some sort of regression. There's really no need to change the way we think about games. Obviously, there's a lot of games in the season, and these weeks happen, I guess, where every single favorite will win. Maybe one week you'll have every single underdog will cover. But trends so far this year, you've had 92 games. We're a third of the way through the season, and favorites are hitting now 48, 40, and 4, which is about 55%. So that's pretty high. If you go into a season and say, I'm just going to bet every single favorite, it's 6 weeks. We're a third of the way through. And obviously you have to hit 52 and change percent to be profitable. So you're making money. You can make a living hitting 55%. So obviously just betting every single favorite, you're winning. But let's take it a step further. Road teams. So road teams, there's really no home field advantage anymore. My models use 1.5. There are a few teams that I'll maybe shade towards 2, maybe as weather gets colder. or some dome teams that certainly are more built for indoors than outdoors. So there's really not a lot of home field advantage anymore. Road teams this year. So favorites, we said, are 55%. Road teams, 59%. That's 52, 36, and 4, the same 4, obviously, but 52 and 36. So, hey, I just don't care about favorite or underdog. I'm just going to bet every single team on the road. Now you're making a lot of money because now you're hitting 60%, which is nobody hits 60% for a season. But one step further, favorites on the road. We used to always talk about home dogs. Oh, I like this team. They're at home. They're catching points. Favorites on the road. 32 times this season, there's been a road favorite. 21-9, 21-9-2, 70%. Just an absurd number. Again, you don't want to change the way you think about games. You don't want to change the way you really handicap or analyze the game. But something to be aware of, there's really no more home field advantage, even though we're going to give some points for teams here and there. Favorites on the road, 70%, a third of the way through the season.
Yeah, road favorites all time. Well, all time being since 1989, which is as far as this database goes, 49.5%. However, if you look recently, let's go since 2020. I'm willing to bet it's about 50%, so a little bit more, and it's gotten better each year since 2022. Still also 50%, but then obviously you go to 2023, which was a winning year for them. So yeah, so it's I'm not typing that in right, but anyway, I saw that road favorites in 2023 had like a 51% cover rate. It's season equals I'm doing that wrong. Season equals 2023 and road favorites 51-48 against the spread in 2023, and like you said, this year it's an astronomical jump. I've been giving 1 point for home teams the past couple years. I used to give, well, obviously you used to give 3 like a long time ago, and then I moved to 1.5, and I came to realize like I thought that was a little too much. Like there really is no difference. Like you said, there are exceptions. You have the weather. You have Miami's home field advantage in September, for example. There's some stadiums that are tougher to play in. Mile High, for example, and Denver is good. But for the most part, there really is no home field advantage anymore. So you have to keep that in mind when you're trying to make these spreads and handicap the games. Jalen Warren had a great game. Yes, he did not. Najee Harris, for some reason, played well. That was another tilting thing. And Najee Harris, he looked so terrible, and then against the Raiders, he looked like Jim Brown suddenly. It was unbelievable. But let's get to the Week 7 games. Broncos against the Saints. The Saints, they are they were favored by 2. Now Denver is actually favored. The line moved. I guess some sharp money coming in on Denver. Yeah, Denver is now -2.5. So I heard some people. I listened to some random NFL shows while I'm walking the dogs or whatever, or driving or picking up my kids. So the prevailing opinion I heard about this game is that I don't know how to handicap these games. There are two rookie quarterbacks here, and my thought is just look at the defenses. Denver is 3rd in defensive EPA. I know Patrick Surtain's gonna be out, but Chris Olave's gonna be out too, so kind of a wash. So Denver is 3rd. The Saints are 25th. They can't tackle the middle of the field. They're missing tackles. They can't cover the middle of the field. They have a lot of problems here. So I think you have Bo Nix versus the 25th ranked defense, or Spencer Rattler versus the 3rd ranked defense, and I think it's obviously a big advantage for Bo Nix, and I think that might be why there's some sharp money coming in on Denver. Just maybe they're kind of realizing that it's just a big advantage for the Broncos. I'm not a big Broncos fan by any means. I faded them last week. I want to have opportunities to fade them. I don't think they're as good as the record indicates. But the Saints team just looks like they're falling apart here. So what are your thoughts on this? Because I like Denver for a couple units.
I don't really like either side of this game. Again, we have the Thursday night game. So this is 3rd game in 10 days for New Orleans. Obviously, with a lot of injuries, it's very important to look at that injury report. Rashid Shaheed didn't practice. Kamara was on a limited basis. McCoy has been out. So there's a lot of injuries piling up for New Orleans. They just gave up 51 points. That's obviously not a good place to be. But you talk about Denver's defense. Denver really hasn't played anybody. They played the Bucs is probably the best game they've played. That was kind of an interesting spot with Tampa Bay off the Detroit game. They played the Jets in the pouring rain. I'm not sure yet that I'm buying Denver as a top defense. Last week, they got blown out. Let's be fair. They were down 23-0 late in that game before San Diego, before the Chargers went to sleep. So obviously that game was a lot closer than it probably should have been. So I'm not necessarily ready to buy Denver as a good defense. That said, I don't want Bo Nix on the road on a short week. I don't want any part of Spencer Rattler, especially with all the injuries. So I don't really have a lean on this game one way or another. It's just one of those things where I'm really not looking forward to this Thursday night game. But if I had to make a pick, I'd probably lean towards the home team. Again, we just talked about how home field advantage doesn't really exist. But if I had to make a pick, I'm not taking Bo Nix on her. Also, interesting to point out, last week there were 2 games where you flipped underdog to favorite, and both of them lost outright. Jacksonville started as an underdog, ended as a favorite, of course, lost. Tennessee started as a dog, ended as a favorite, also lost. Denver on the look ahead, even knowing that Carr was out, was an underdog. Now they're favored. That line seems to be running a little bit. I definitely wouldn't be on the Bo Nix Denver laying 2.5.
Okay. It's not a big play for me. Like I said, a couple units here. People are asking about the Sean Payton revenge factor. Do you factor any of that in? I personally don't, because he's been off the team for a couple of years now. It's not like if he was there last year, then he might know the personnel pretty well.
Exactly.
Exactly. But yeah, it's been too long, I think.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the next game, which is the third consecutive London game, and thank goodness this is the final one. I really hate these games. I know we have one more in Germany. I actually thought there were going to be 2 more in Germany, so it was kind of pleasant to find out that there was only one. So yeah, we only have 2 more of these horrible 9:30 games left. I actually like this one quite a lot. So the Jaguars are 5.5-point favorites, which might seem just way too high, but I think this actually it's funny. We're talking about home field advantages. This actually might be the best home field advantage all year, even though the Jaguars are technically not at home, but they've been in London for a week now, and we saw that have just an astronomical impact last year, where they had their body clocks adjusted. Then the Bills came in. The Bills far more superior than the Jaguars were last year. The Jaguars at that time were a decent team, but the Bills were great. They just stomped all over the Dolphins, and they got blown out in London by the Jaguars. The Jaguars just looked awake. I remember just watching that game thinking wow, the Jaguars have so much energy, whereas the Bills look like they're sleepwalking. And that was a superior Bills team. And now you have this dreadful Patriot team, probably the worst team in the NFL, heading overseas against a team that, they just got humiliated on an international stage. They're going to be in London for the entire week. They're going to be the laughing stock there. Everyone's going to be talking about how horrible they were. And this is it, right? If they lose this game, their season is officially over. You could maybe argue it already is, but they could at least salvage something here if they win a game. They're 2-5. They come back. Maybe they have a chance to do something, but this is it for them. I just think this whole body clock thing is a big advantage for them here. I like Jacksonville a lot. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, the body clock is the only reason to like Jacksonville in this game. How did they not fire the coach after last week? I would have sent him home midweek or sent him somewhere else. It looks like they quit on the coach. They're certainly not buttoned up. We talked about the play calling last week with Tank Bigsby not starting the game. Then all of a sudden, Ernest Johnson is getting carries on the goal line. They're catching passes and fumbling coming out of halftime. That's just lack of preparation and lack of attention to detail. They're getting penalties on third down, again, showing the lack of attention to detail, lack of preparation, lack of focus, and that's all coaching. This coach is done. He's going to get fired after their next loss. If that's this week, obviously he's gone. The schedule gets – I had thought going into London or 2 weeks ago they could have gotten a couple of wins, turn their season around. Now the season's over. They're not going anywhere. Even if they win this game, which they should, they're still not going anywhere. But the line is a little high. And we talked last week, I thought I was real smart taking teams like Carolina, New England as contest picks. Both teams get blown out. But this line just feels like, how am I laying points now with Jacksonville? They're 2-10 in their last 10 games, so the last 12 games straight up. So they're not winning games, let alone covering games. They're only cover. They beat the Colts 2 weeks ago by 3, and they beat Carolina last year. That's their other win. Otherwise, I'm laying now a price with Peterson with a team that probably quit. Also, it may rain. So the forecast calls for rain in London, and I've watched Lawrence enough times unable to handle snaps, fumbles a lot in the rain. If again, gun to my head, I'm looking at the underdog here with the points. No confidence in it whatsoever. I'm not a Drake May fan. Obviously, our defense hasn't been good, but I want no part of a team that has like 1 foot out the door as far as their coach is concerned.
Okay, well, I'll be alone on this island. I think maybe, but the Jaguars will be in my super contest pool. I just think they rebound off that humiliating loss. I don't think they're as bad as they've looked. And I know they only beat the Colts by 3, but they were up by a couple touchdowns and they allowed some garbage time scores. So John saying Lawrence needs to cut his hair. Yeah, I mean, he needs a look. He needs like something. He needs like facial hair. Doesn't maybe not cut his hair, but like a facial hair, maybe like a parrot on his shoulder or something, like an eye patch. Like he needs something. I feel like.
Here, he needs a new coach is what he needs.
Yeah, now I also would have fired Doug Peterson. I tweeted like Doug Peterson might be the first coach to be fired in between London games in NFL history, and I would have sent him home on like a raft or something, not even a plane. Like
he got a vote of confidence, by the way, from the owners, which is crazy. He got a vote of confidence by Shad Khan.
Shad Khan, yeah.
Khan.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of I don't know if he's gonna fire. Like if they win this game, I don't think he's gonna be fired this season. He'll be I think after the season. If he loses this game though, I think he will be fired.
He will be fired. I can almost guarantee you. Where's Jacksonville here on my schedule? They play at Detroit and then they go into a bye week 12. Okay. He will not be the coach of this team after Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving.
Okay, we'll see. But I don't know. I think if they win this game, they'll feel better about them. But yeah, I can see that happening. The Jaguars shipped the defensive tackle to Seattle. More moves coming. Did that just happen? Because I did not see that.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I didn't see that either. He looks like Targaryen. Serious question: how many games do you actually watch? I watch every game. NFL Plus has like games where you can fast forward. Like they showed like instead of like stoppages in between plays, they show play. You can watch a game in 25 minutes, so it's pretty easy. I'm retired the bias. Yeah. All right, so let's get to the real Sunday games. Seattle at Atlanta. This line was 2.5. It opens 3 now. When I saw 2.5, I'm like, this is so shady, the spread, because Atlanta a couple weeks ago Kirk Cousins throws for 500 yards against the Buccaneers on national TV. They win in overtime, and then they blow out the Panthers. Whereas the Seahawks have lost 3 in a row, including a loss to the Giants, and then they got blown out on national TV against San Francisco. And I say national TV it's Amazon Prime still. So yeah, this looks like it's like, hey, the sports books are like, hey, please take Atlanta here. But then the line moved to 3. But I still think this looks a little short. But I actually like Seattle here. I think this is a much more important game for Seattle. The Seahawks are, like I said, coming off a 3-game losing streak. And they need to turn things around. Atlanta has Tampa next week, so they could be looking past this game a little bit. And I think like the prevailing opinion about Seattle, all I've heard, like I said, I listened to shows like Seattle's defense is so bad, like it's just a terrible defense. They can't stop anyone, and that's true to an extent. But Atlanta is ranked similarly to Seattle defensively. Like Seattle is 22nd in defensive EPA, Atlanta's 20th. And I like the matchups here that Seattle has. Like Atlanta is pretty bad against outside receivers or in the slot. Seattle can take advantage of that. Also, Atlanta not pretty weak against the run. Like Chuba Hubbard was doing everything against them last week. So I think Kenneth Walker should have a good game. Now, Atlanta has some good advantages too. Like I think Bijan Robinson is going to be able to run, and also Tyler Algier. So this could be a close game, but I think Seattle, especially at +3, I think they're the way to go. So what do you think about this game?
Well, Seattle just gave up over 200 yards rushing to Niners backup running backs.
Right.
And talking about matchups, Seattle ranks 28th in defensive yards per carry. Atlanta finally didn't play a 1-score game last week. That was we liked Carolina last week. Atlanta plays a lot of 1-score games, a lot of luck involved, but they finally won by margin. I do think this will be a 1-score game. Atlanta's off an easy win, like you said, looking forwards. But Seattle, they haven't beaten anybody. So, and their defense hasn't been good. And this is a team, Atlanta, who's capable of putting up points there at home. So they're in the dome. Kirk Cousins, he should have a clean pocket. It's worth noting Seattle defense still very banged up. At 2.5, I would lean towards Atlanta. At 3, I'd have more interest in Seattle. What I do like in this game is points. Now, the over-under in this game opened 47, and it's now 51. So I'll tell you who's betting what. There's going to be a lot of points in this game. Atlanta's going to put up points. Seattle's going to come right back with them. It's going to be similar to that Detroit game. I think it'll be a one-score game, but I don't really see any real value in Seattle at 2.5. I think the line is perfect, exactly where it should be.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree with that, but I think that given the public perception, I thought this line would be higher. Like I thought one might move to 3.5 or something, or maybe 4.
Well, in that case, everybody would be on Seattle at 3.5.
The sharps would be. I think the public would be on Atlanta. I think still, but I don't know. I just thought that when it opened 2.5, it just looked like they were trying to invite so much action on Atlanta. But
it's interesting. You talk about these points here. A lot of people look last week, just using last week as an example. Hey, I like the better team. Well, the better team, let's say, is Atlanta, for argument's sake. I think Atlanta is a slightly better team. But the reality is the way to win and the way to consistently win is playing the numbers. If you told me the line was 3.5, I don't have to think about it. I'm on Seattle. The line's 2.5. I'm probably leaning towards Atlanta. Numbers, every half point, every full point really matters a lot. And you'll see real bettors, professional bettors. I'm not talking about people coming in with huge bankrolls where the casinos don't respect the bet. But they are professional bettors playing $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on a game that will move the lines. And they're going to bet both sides of a game. They'll be on the minus 2.5. They'll take back 3.5, or they'll lay 2.5 and take back 3 even. So these half points really do matter, even though last week they didn't. And for the most part this season, they haven't, with teasers getting clobbered as well. But I think this line is really perfect, and I don't really see any edge. Atlanta plays a lot of it. We talked about this last week or the week before with Tampa. They play a lot of games that are 1-2 point games because they kick a lot of field goals. So I can absolutely see the 2.5 coming into play for Seattle, but it's not something where I would find a lot of value. If we hit 3, then yes, I'm on your side.
Yeah, the Falcons are. The Falcons are one of these teams. Like, feels like every result of theirs is like a war. It's like 18-16, like 19, right. 19-17, 13-12. Like that's how it is. So you're absolutely
Young
right.
Wei Koo is always coming out for some big kick late in the game, down 1 or down 2.
Always. You're right. The public did well last week. Yeah, every single public team won or covered. It was unbelievable. Nathan's saying long trip for Seattle. Seattle's actually 16-10 against the spread in these early 1 p.m. games since I think like 2008 or something. So yeah, they've done well here. And he says Atlanta's defense better than Seattle's defense. They're pretty neutral. I think like Atlanta's 20th in defensive EPA, Seattle's 22nd. So they're pretty equal. All right, so let's get to the next game. Tennessee at Buffalo. So I thought that like the result of the Monday night game would dictate this. Like if the Bills lost another game, they would have lost 3 in a row. I thought they would have come out and just had a great effort here against Tennessee. Now, of course, they won. It was an emotional win, of course, against the Jets. It was a big game. So I don't know if like the desperation is not going to be there, but I don't know if it's going to matter. Like Tennessee is just so bad. Their defense has some good things going on, but they have injuries. Chidobe Awuzie is out, for example. Jeffrey Simmons was banged up recently. Like he's going to play, obviously, but still, like this Tennessee defense, like with that shutdown, Caleb Williams in week 1, this is not the same unit, but they still, like I said, they have some positives. The one negative here, though, is their linebacking core, and I have I have a huge worry about like their ability to stop Josh Allen as a scrambler, or James Cook if he returns as a pass catcher out of the backfield, or who knows, Ray Davis, who's good. So I like the Bills to cover here, but given that they're coming off a win on short week, a big win on short week, like I just don't see myself betting this game. But for office pool purposes, this is Buffalo for me. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, it's a bad spot coming off of a short week, divisional win, obviously an emotional win on the road, in which you can argue they definitely should not have won. That being said, Tennessee, ranked very high defensively. I think they're ranked number 1 in yards per play given up at 4.3 per play, which I think is somewhat of a misleading number given the opponents that they've played. But their offense is atrocious. Tennessee last week, 27 dropbacks for Levis, 95 yards. Couldn't hit his receivers. So that's a big problem. Obviously, they can't move the football at all. Buffalo are bullies. I think we talked about this last year when we first spoke. Buffalo is, I think Josh Allen, I wrote this down here. Josh Allen has 71 wins in his career. Okay, 71 career wins for Josh Allen. 51 of the 71 have been by 7 or more points. Josh Allen's not great in close games. When those games get tight, we find Josh Allen chucking the ball deep, trying to be a hero. There's bad play calling, and there's a lack of calmness for him in late game situations. Tie game, not a huge fan of Josh Allen. When they're behind, don't love it. But when they're ahead, he piles on. And 51 out of 71 of his wins by 7+ points. They killed Tennessee a couple of years ago. I think this is one of those games. Now, I wouldn't look or rush to lay 8.5, 9 points as a contest pick, but I would have made this line 9.5, 10. And I could see Buffalo putting up 24, 27, 30+ points. I have no idea how Tennessee gets near 24. I could see this game being one of those like 31-10, 31-13, something of that nature. Also with Tennessee, they had 3.5 yards per pass last week. We talked about 95 yards. For context, Cleveland right now is the worst in the league at 5.2 yards per attempt for a season. And Tennessee was 50% worse than that. They're not going to move the ball. They're not going to put up points. I don't see how this game's not a blowout.
There's some questions here, Levis or Rudolph. It's going to be Levis for now, I think. But yeah, you also have to ask yourself, is there any chance of a backdoor here either? Is Will Levis going to get you a backdoor cover?
I don't see it.
Right. I don't see it either. It's not like if this is like Andy Dalton, they were playing the Panthers. You could think maybe they could do it. But Will Levis, I can't believe he didn't hit 100 passing yards against a Colts defense that just made Trevor Lawrence look like the old Trevor Lawrence of 2022. There's just such a dreadful performance. I had to laugh at the stat. Calvin Ridley had no catches on 8 targets. It was the first time
crazy.
Yeah, it's the first time since 2012 a receiver had no catches on 8+ targets. Just unbelievable. Of course, I play them in one of my DFS lineups together.
I'm disappointed in Buffalo. I know they traded today for Cooper, which is a nice pickup. It's not great. They are desperate for a wide receiver. Now the Jets, we'll talk about the Jets later. And obviously, it's great pickup. Devontae, that's really nice. I'm sure Rodgers is very excited. One of my diehard Jet fan friends said before, you could bank on Rodgers getting hurt this week. It's classic, such a Jetsy thing to happen. They'll trade for Devontae. They'll have this great receiving core now. And they won't have a quarterback. But I really thought, and again, it was a 3rd-round pick, conditional 2nd-round pick. It's really going to be a 3rd-round pick unless they're in the AFC Championship game. But Buffalo really needed Devontae Adams. That is a perfect fit. And that's a shame that he's not going there because you could see Khalil Shakir being the number 1 option for Josh Allen. And now, Cooper, who's a little bit older, not washed up, not completely done, but I certainly will add a lot of value. I would have loved to see Devontae going to Buffalo. But we'll see what Cooper brings to the table. Maybe it's like one of those like Anquan Bolden type of situations back for the Ravens 10, 12 years ago. A nice possession receiver, somebody that Allen could rely on over the middle, as opposed to Keon Coleman, who's had a lot of drops. Curtis Samuel can't catch a pass. Mac Hollins can't catch. He's throwing the ball deep to backup running backs, so who made a nice play the other night. But they're in desperate need of a number 1 receiver. Let's see if Cooper could bring that to the table.
Yeah, although it doesn't even matter if these guys catch because they just get pass interference flags all the time. That's what it's been the past 2 weeks. But no, I like the Cooper move. I think the difference with Cooper and Adams. Now I agree. Adams would have been the better fit, but financially, the Jets have to pay Adams a lot of money, whereas the Bills are barely paying anything for Cooper, and they just had a tougher financial situation. So I guess it made sense for that perspective. But I love Cooper though. He is, in my opinion, the best route runner in the NFL. So he's even 3 years from now when he's in his mid-30s, I think he's still going to be good. I think Anquan Bolden was a great comparison. He's going to be able to play into his mid-30s, whereas I'm not sure if Adams will be able to, but Adams, I think this year would be better, but still.
Adams' hamstring is all of a sudden much better.
Yeah.
He's recuperated.
Right.
Nice plane ride from the west to east. He's good. Cooper, you'll see Cooper. I'm looking forward to watching him, kind of just his mindset on the field, because he had passes being sailed over his head when he walks to the sideline on those long 3rd downs and just not even being anywhere close to the ball. He just looked deflated. And now he'll be playing in a much better system. I think there'll be a lot of life to him. He did have an amazing game last year. I'm trying to think back. I think it was a Flacco game where he had like 200 yards receiving. So, he's certainly capable of those types of performances, but I think he'll definitely add a lot to that offense.
Yeah, I think that was against Houston late in the year. I think Amari Cooper, if I remember correctly, Amari Cooper led the league, or currently leads the league in uncatchable passes thrown to him. So it's going to be much better in Buffalo. All right. Next game is Bengals at the Browns. This was 5.5, and then actually before I saw the Amari Cooper news, I saw this line like shoot up to 6 and then 6.5. I'm like, what is going on here? And then it was obviously the trade. No more Amari Cooper for the Browns. So the number one receiver is Jerry Jeudy. I still like the Browns. I wonder if this is kind of like a coach firing situation or a quarterback switch where players are going to be, kind of geared up to be like, hey, this is not my fault, So I think the Browns could be a little motivated here. They're 1-5. They actually played a good game last week. And as bad as Deshaun Watson has been this year, last week was his best game. He was 11 of 11 to begin the second half, which was, I could not believe that. Maybe it's like that's how bad Philadelphia's defense is, but Cincinnati's defense is pretty bad too, especially in the secondary. They also can't stop the run, but like in the secondary, they can't cover outside receivers. Now, Jerry Jeudy, Cooper is gone, but Jerry Jeudy is still there. But Cincinnati has not won in Cleveland under Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is 0-4 in Cleveland. It's been a house of horrors for him. Myles Garrett has given that offensive line so many problems, and I think that's going to continue. Nick Chubb's going to be back, which is I don't know how effective he'll be, but I think at the very least he's going to draw attention away from the defense. And I think the most important thing is, and I'm kicking myself for not betting the Browns last week, is because I was waiting for this all year. Jedrick Wilson and Jack Conklin were back for the first time all year together. And really just in general, because Jedrick Wills returned, I think, for week 3, but he left with an injury right away. So they didn't have these guys on the field for the same time at all. And now they do. And so now Watson is getting protection. So, of course he's doing better. He's still a pretty shaky quarterback, but this is a great matchup for him. And at Cincinnati coming off a win on national TV, I think there might be a slight letdown. But this is Cleveland's Super Bowl. Like they want to take the Bengals down in state rivalry. I like the Browns a lot here. What do you think?
So you just listed a whole bunch of reasons why their offense is better. The offensive line, Watson completing 11 passes in a row. The Eagles have a bad defense. Mm-hmm. They scored 9 offensive points last week. 9.
I know.
No touchdowns on offense. Their touchdown was on a blocked field goal. So with all that, they still put up 9 points. They're averaging 9 yards per third down, third and 9 to go. That's a league worst by a wide margin. That's probably historically one of the worst in a long time, if somebody could pull that information up. They're converting under 20% on third down. That's half of league average. So, and did the team quit on Watson? I mean, I just mentioned Cooper kind of walking around with passes being sailed over his head. They also lead the NFL with 36 offensive penalties. So maybe things are trending in the right direction with offensive linemen coming back and now shipping guys away who may have been disgruntled. But I mean, this is just not a team that you really want any part of. Now, that being said, we were on them. I talked about taking them last week simply because I couldn't lay 8.5 with the Eagles. The Eagles haven't won by more than 7 points in now over a year. And I'll say the same thing about Cincinnati. Something is obviously wrong with Cincinnati. Aside from the game where they kind of blew against Baltimore, they just have not looked right. And now, again, you follow line moves. If you're tailing late in the week lines that have moved multiple points, you're not winning. This line was 3.5 on the look ahead. This line opened at 4 and now 6.5 because they lost Cooper. That makes no sense. So this line is too high. I agree with what you said about Cincinnati playing Cleveland as a bad matchup, as a big rivalry game. It's too many points. We talked about, you mentioned at the start of the show, how I was on the Giants. I find myself on the Giants every single week. Maybe I have to update my numbers. And I was actually, I live bet the Giants. I had plus 7.5. And at halftime, I took the Giants when they were down by 7 as a pick'em. So I'm sitting with 3.5, 7, 7.5, and I'm feeling pretty good, even with the missed field goals late in the game or the fourth down lack of conversions when they were down by 3, because I figure, okay, Cincinnati's going to run out the clock. It's 2nd and 3. It's a 2-minute warning. They must have spoken about the situation during the 2-minute timeout. And guy breaks off a 30-yard run for a touchdown and screws everybody's bets. And of course, to add to my misery, Giants missed another field goal that could have at least covered my 7.5. So I don't trust Cincinnati right now. Defensively, their offense certainly wasn't good last week. 6.5 is way too many points. Probably a game I want to stay away from because I really, it was hard to take the Browns last week. Over a touchdown, I was okay with it. Under a touchdown, it's tough. I kind of make this game like a 20-16 type of game. I don't like either side. I would take the points because it's just too many points.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm going to be on the Browns. It's a tough pill to swallow. But I don't know. You're right about their total offensive output, like 9 points, like not great. But Watson was 11 of 11 to start the second half, so it does make sense that he would be doing better. Let's see here. We had a question here. Nick Harris going down, problem or not? Well, they might get Ethan Posick back. Harris is their backup anyway, so Posick would be nice to get back. He's their center, but still, the fact that they have both tackles back is good. All right, so next game, Texans at the Packers. Packers favored by 3. I think the line makes sense. I like Green Bay here from a matchup standpoint, and we talked about this both weeks beforehand, where we were frustrated with Houston's play calling of Bobby Slowick. Like, he just calls way too many early down runs, and that got him into trouble against Jacksonville, where it was just as Cam Akers, not even on the team anymore. It's just Cam Akers. Over and over again. It was just brutal to watch because it got CJ Stroud into third and longs all the time. Last week, they get Joe Mixon back, and suddenly their offense is working because now it's Joe Mixon instead of Cam Akers getting the early down work, and it worked, obviously, because he's just so much better. But Green Bay has been one of the best run defenses in the NFL this year. So if Bobby Slowick continues this, then that's going to get him into a lot of trouble. And CJ Stroud is going to be into third and longs again. And the Packers have Jair Alexander to take away one of the weapons. If they had Nico Collins healthy, then yeah, they'd have Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell as weapons. But Alexander's going to take away one of Diggs or Dell, and it's CJ Stroud's only going to have one of those guys at his disposal. So I think this is a rough spot here, matchup wise, for the Texans. So I'm looking at the Packers at -3. Not in love with this game, but I really like the matchup. So what do you think about this game?
Yeah, my concern would be that LaFleur's comments after last week's game, he sounded a little too satisfied with how well they played. They played a pretty complete game from start to finish, created turnovers, moved the ball, played good defense. I don't like coaches that sound like that after a game, how excited and how happy they are with how well they played. I like coaches that talk about things that they need to do better, get back to the drawing board, or not after a loss, but just, hey, we won, but something that they can improve upon. So I don't like hearing how LaFleur, how excited he was after a game. My power ratings in this game make the line a little shorter. I have Houston as the better team. I may be a little too low on Green Bay. I have not been as impressed with Green Bay over the last year and a half as I think the general market has been. So maybe that's a flaw in my system because I do have Houston as the better team, and I certainly don't give anybody 3 points for home field. So that being said, I would have made this line under a field goal. I actually made the line pick 'em when I originally did my lines. So at 3, I would lean towards Houston getting 3. I think this is a good game. I think it's a 3-point game. I don't have any reason to pick one team over another. But I definitely think 3 feels a little high. It's not a pick that I would run to bet on or use as a contest. If this line dropped, and I wonder where the juice is in this game. I'm just going to quickly pull that up. So it's 3 even right now. At the Westgate, it's 3 plus 02. So that kind of tells me that this line may close 2.5 or drop down to 2.5 soon. And I think that's probably where the contest lines would come out, which don't give me any value at all on Houston, really. So this is a game more to enjoy than to pick.
Yeah, I had a conflict with my projected spread. So my personal number was -2.5. So it makes you think that the Texans are the right side. But the EPA numbers say Green Bay should actually be -5.5. The metrics really hate Houston. And that's been the case for a couple weeks now. So I didn't know where to go with that. But then I thought about the matchups, and I thought Green Bay just matched up well against Houston. So that's the only angle I have here. All right, so let's get to the next game. Dolphins at the Colts. So this might be the last time we see Tyler Huntley as the starting quarterback for the Dolphins. So there's a chance the Tua comes back in week 8. That's when he's first eligible, and that's what Adam Schefter said, that he might return. So my role, as if you guys haven't heard, my role with backup quarterbacks, I've done the research like how they've covered over like a long period of time. Backup quarterbacks or backup caliber quarterbacks against mediocre or worse defenses have actually covered at a pretty high rate. Against top 12 defenses, they have really struggled, and it makes sense if you think about it. And this is a case where the Colts obviously do not have a good defense. They played well against Will Levis last week, and as sad as it sounds, like Tyler Huntley's, I think, an upgrade over Will Levis. I think Levis is just a lost cause at this point. Whereas Huntley has played well in some spot starts in the past, usually against bad defenses. And he has Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at his disposal. Devon Achane might come back. This Dolphins team has a lot of weapons, and the Colts defense has so many injuries that I just feel like Miami is going to score enough to keep pace. And Miami's defense's weakness is stopping the run. The Colts don't have Jonathan Taylor. It's usually like I usually don't care about running back injuries, but this is like one of the few cases where I think it matters, just because I think Trey Sermon is pretty ineffective. So I'm looking at plus 3.5. I think this line's too high. So matchup wise, like the Dolphins, spread wise, like the Dolphins. I'm going to be on Miami here for a few units. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I think I'm on the other side of this one. Miami's off a bye and a win. And we're going to look at bye weeks as the weeks go on. I don't like teams that are coming off a bye with a win. I prefer teams that are coming off a bye with a loss. McDaniels, it's worth noting that he's won the last 2 years with Miami off of his bye week. Now let's talk matchup wise. You mentioned the running game. So the Colts gave up 5.2 yards per carry to Tennessee, who doesn't exactly have the best run game. And of course, they're missing 3/4 of their defensive line. Last week, they had 11 penalties, and I think 9 guys are now on the injured reserve list. So all these are big problems. But I look at a comparable game. So 2 weeks ago, Tennessee played Miami, and Tennessee killed them. And last week, of course, Tennessee Colts was a different story. The Colts at home this year scored 27 against Houston, 21 against Chicago, and 27 against Pittsburgh. So it's not exactly the top defense, although Pittsburgh obviously is pretty good, but it's not a bottom feeder list of defenses. So I do think the Colts will put up somewhere mid-20s, perhaps, 23, 24. Miami scored 40 points in the last 4 weeks. Yes, I know Indy's defense is worse than some of those other teams that they've played, but I have no faith. I mean, Seattle's defense is not very good either, and they've scored 3 in Seattle, and I thought they would be more competitive in that game. So I don't have any faith in Miami's offense right now, no matter who's playing quarterback, to do much, regardless of what defense they're playing against. So I looked at this line, and I thought it was going to be more like a 4. So when I saw a 3, it's 3.5 in Westgate right now. It's 3 at Circa. I'm curious to see where this lands. I'm curious to see what happens with Taylor. Is Taylor for short out? Is he
he's a high ankle sprain, so you have to think it's going to be like 3 or 4 games,
Richardson, normally I might say I like Flacco better, but Richardson with his running ability may make a difference in this game. I don't have a strong opinion either way. I would lean towards the Colts just because I don't have any confidence in Miami's offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think Richardson would be better for the Colts in this matchup, whereas a couple weeks ago, we was talking about how Flacco would be better against Jacksonville. So, I mean, we'll see. I'll say that Seattle game, it was Skylar Thompson, who's just brutal. And then they had Tim Boyle play, which as soon as Tim Boyle came out, I'm like, how is this guy still on the roster? Where's Mike White? They had Mike White, but they actually had Mike White and Skylar Thompson, so they had Skylar White. It's pretty funny. John Sanders with the 411 super chat. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate your contributions as always. He's asking Dolphins at plus 950 to win the AFC East. Is that good value? I think it is good value if Tua comes back, but like you don't know that. That's the question. Still though, like I feel like they would still be an underdog, like a heavy underdog against the Bills, who are sitting at 4-2 right now.
And Bills have a win against them.
Yeah, so I think you would be banking on Josh Allen going down for a few games to allow the Dolphins to catch up. Yeah, plus 950 is not the worst. I think you can make like much worse bets. So if you throw a little bit on it, I don't have an issue with that. I would not make a big play on this though, but I think it's a little interesting. What are your thoughts on this?
I think Miami's a dead team. I took under 9.5 several weeks ago and haven't hedged it back yet. No interest in looking at it right now. I don't see Miami. Looking at Miami's schedule, at Indy, they play Arizona at home. Then they go at Buffalo in week 9. Tua are not. Buffalo owns Miami. They
Yeah.
always kill Miami. They killed them in Miami with Tua. That was the game he got knocked out. But that game was well over while he was still in the game. So I don't have any confidence in Miami winning that game. If Miami loses that game to Buffalo, I mean, the season's done. And that plus 950 is going to immediately double, if not triple, and you'll want no part of it. So if you like Miami, the way to look right now would be the over on the wins. But I don't know if 10-1 is enough for me to get excited about Miami division. The Jets, maybe. I think the Jets might be, 4-1 right now, somewhere in that ballpark. I certainly don't think the Jets are done. But I don't have any hopes for Miami. And I also think Tua is at a major risk for going down again. And if he has another concussion this year, his season's over.
His career could be over.
Career could be over.
Yeah. And keep in mind, quarterbacks have a terrible quarterbacks off concussions have a terrible track record in the first game. So yeah, maybe, I don't, the more I think about it, I agree with you. I think that's not a bet I'd want to make. Is Callahan a bad coach? Yes. I think we can say that. By the way, Mike Vrabel was 6-0 against the spread off a bye. Brian Callahan gets blown out, or not blown out, but he loses to the Colts, where his quarterback doesn't throw for 100 yards. He was supposed to be the offensive answer for the guy to coach up Will Levis. and Will Levis just seems to get worse every week. Johnson's Jets are 5.5-1, which is even better than the 3-1 that you thought. I don't, John, what sportsbook's at? It's kind of interesting. All right. So anyway, let's get to the next game. We have Lions at the Vikings. It's the big early game. Actually, probably the best game of the week. So the Lions are a huge public dog here. Seems like everyone's on the Lions, but I guess that might be a good thing based on how we're trending. I would be on Minnesota, I guess. Aiden Hutchinson going down, just such a huge deal. Like, Minnesota pass protects so well that you need a special player like Hutchinson to kind of break through the cracks there and just rattle Sam Darnold. And now with Hutchinson out, I don't think the Lions are going to be able to do that. The Vikings do play on Thursday, so generally small favorites are okay heading to a Thursday. I'm not too concerned about that. But they are I don't like the spot for either team because the Lions are coming off that 47-9 win over Dallas where they're messing around at the end, just trying to make tackle eligible touchdowns. And the Vikings won on international stage before the bye. They've had 2 weeks to feel good about themselves. It's not a spot where I want to bet either team. So just gonna sit back and watch this. I'm leaning toward Minnesota, but I'm not gonna play this game. What do you have here?
Yeah, again, terrible spot. I don't like, Minnesota off a bye and a win, 5-0, due for a loss. I mean, they're a good team. We said their coaching has been incredible, but they're certainly due for a loss. Now, Detroit circled the game against Dallas. They really made an emphasis all season coming into that game. They had a great plan. I love that play where they had Sewell coming around on a hook and ladder. Mm-hmm. That was so brilliant. I'm mesmerized watching their offense. I really enjoy watching their offense. They dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides. And they were, again, like Green Bay, they really played a complete game last week. So it's very, very hard to replicate that in back-to-back weeks. So, again, terrible spot. I'm not a Lions fan and certainly good for my Niners, but what a shame with Hutchinson. That guy, Defensive Player of the Year, candidate for sure. Leading the league in sacks. He's just a man possessed. And it's such a shame that he's got to go down and really, it doesn't really change the lines that much. What's he really worth in Vegas to the point spread? A half a point? A full point? Probably not much more than that. But the truth is, it makes those 1 or 2 plays a week that are strong impact plays that can be worth a lot of points, that can be worth a full possession, or if not, saving a touchdown or creating a turnover. So him not being there is really, really sad. I am excited to watch Detroit's offense against the Minnesota defense. I think this game is going to be high scoring. I think both teams will put up points. Gun to my head, I like the Lions because I don't think there's any look ahead here. I think they understand Minnesota's ahead of them in the division. And I do think Detroit is the better team. It's a bad way to handicap or pick a game. I also think Minnesota is due for a loss. I also don't like that the line is running. Line open 1, it was 1.5. Now it's up 2.5. So that tells me that Detroit's not a public dog. That tells me people are, or maybe it's professional money coming in early in the week on Minnesota. I don't really like the game. I don't really find value in either side. but I'll be sitting back and enjoying the game. Gun to my head, I picked the Lions to win.
Yeah, I got the sense it was sharp money on the Vikings, given that there's so much action on so many tickets on the lines. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see where it goes. If it goes to 3, it's Detroit suddenly seems interesting. The teaser though, who I don't know who brought that up. Cam Eagle says Detroit plus 8.5 on the teaser. I think that's probably the way to go in this game. But and John Sanders said that FanDuel you could find Jets at plus 550 to win the division. Do you like that?
No, I like the Jets over 7.5 wins at minus 120, which we bet last night at 2:00 in the morning.
We did,
which is now minus 160, by the way. So I'd rather take my chances on over 7.5 wins than plus 500 on the division. But I certainly think the Jets are alive. So we'll talk about the Jets in a little bit.
Matthias asking, what is the EPA on this team? So the Lions are currently number 1 in defensive EPA. Now, keep in mind that's with Hutchinson, so there's going to be a downgrade. The Vikings are number 6 because their offense is ranked 18th for some reason. Their defense is number 2. So Detroit is number 3 in offense, number 4 in defense. So if you take a look at the line for the EPA would be Detroit minus 1.5. So the metrics like Detroit, but again, that's with Hutchinson, so you have to downgrade Detroit.
It's worth noting that the last 3 times these two teams played, Detroit's put up 30 plus.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And Minnesota's defense has been great this year. But I'll say this, though. Brian Flores blitzes a lot, obviously. Jared Goff is great against the blitz. In fact, his stats against the blitz are better than when he's not blitzed. So that could be an angle to look for here as well. Last of the early games, we have the Eagles and the New York Giants. Kind of curious. You're going to be on the Giants again here.
I'm a sucker for these stupid Giants.
I know.
But I bet it at +4, so it's okay.
I was actually looking at that. The advanced spread was +4, and I'm like, what a shame we're not getting +4 anymore. It's now +3. I still like the Giants a little bit. I really don't like the way this Eagles team is playing. They had a great opportunity to kind of like showcase themselves against the Browns. They got all 3 players back, the Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, and Lane Johnson, and they barely beat Cleveland. They allowed Deshaun Watson to go 11 for 11. I know that the Browns had their tackles back. I was talking about that before, but still, how do you allow Deshaun Watson to start 11 for 11 in the second half? So I have concerns about the Eagles stopping the Giants, especially if Malik Neighbors comes back. So there's that. Also, Jalen Hurts in these situations, he's 7-15 against the spread as a road favorite in his career, which is not great. But again, like if you take the Giants to +3, there's not much room for error because like you have to have the Giants beat the Eagles probably in most cases, and I just don't know if they could do it. Like this Giants team is just like a perennial loser. At +4, I'd feel so much better. +3, not great. I'm not going to touch this game at +3, but if this were +4, I'd be on the same side as you. So are you still like +3?
Yeah, I do. I think the line should have been a little bit less. Obviously, Giants off a tough loss. Philly off of a poorly played win with Sirianni arguing with fans after the game. So there's a lot wrong in that locker room. They did get some guys back. Lane Johnson back. The receivers are back. But Mailata hurt. Mailata being out is a huge, huge problem. Dallas Goedert got hurt last game, left the game with injury. Darius Slay left the game with injury. So I don't think the Giants' offense is good enough with Daniel Jones to take advantage of Philly's defense. And, of course, Saquon had a bad game last week. He's coming back to the Giants. I expect him to do better. I really like that defensive line. They harassed Burrow last week. They're going to get after Hurts. They're going to force Hurts into mistakes, and Hurts makes mistakes with the football. I do like that Giant front seven. That Giant front seven has been dominant for the last couple of weeks. It says they can't finish drives. Maybe Neighbors helps if he comes back. And again, I look at the intangibles here. There's just injuries piling up for Philadelphia. The last time Hurts played at the Giants was last year, Week 18. And again, Philly didn't really need the game. They had locked up the playoff seed already, but they were reeling, and they needed to show something before they went into the playoffs. And, of course, they got blown out. Hurts got benched in that game. So I need to talk about, there's revenge. Well, the last time they had a revenge game was the Bucs game a few weeks ago where they got blown out in the playoffs. They had a revenge spot against Tampa, and they got blown out again, which, again, speaks to leadership in the locker room, speaks to the fact that they don't have that real voice. Hurts has been horrendous, especially when facing pressure. I don't like that this line opened 4 and is now being bet down and moving down. Again, you're playing the steam on the Giants, but I like the Giants. I think the +3 is there. I certainly think they're a live dog to win the game. and I don't trust Philly, especially laying points.
Yeah, I don't trust Philly at all either. You know what? But my problem here is I don't trust the Giants though, because like
Right.
3 weeks ago they had Dallas at home, and they couldn't beat Dallas. And like Dallas, I think you'd agree is definitely worse than Philly. And
For
then
sure.
yeah, and then last week they had the Bengals at home. They played well, and they didn't win. I feel like they're going to find a way to lose this
Right.
game, and it could be
The
by
kicking
4.
game is poor.
Right.
And also, I don't know if you saw, Andrew Thomas is out.
Yes. Yeah, he's gonna be missing quite a few
That's a big
weeks here.
loss.
So yeah,
That's
it
a big
is
loss.
absolutely a big loss. So yeah, I couldn't get to this game from a betting perspective. I will take the Giants. I agree that the line's too high. I actually made this a pick 'em, but again, I just don't trust the Giants. If I had +4 like you, I'd feel much more confident. Let's see here. Ron, are you saying the best sleeper bet is the Browns? Well, maybe underdog bet. I marked down the Bengals as my trap game for survivor purposes. Like I always say that like don't take one of these teams, and I would not be on the Bengals given that Joe Burrow's 0-4 in Cleveland. The Browns just have had their number. Divisional games are weird, and one team sometimes has another team's number. So anyway, Randy asked, would you bet Giants at 6.5-point teaser? There's not. I don't like teasing up from 3 to.
No, I don't see
yeah,
a value there.
yeah, I
We
wouldn't do
saw it
that.
last week. They were a 3.5-point dog. They ended up losing by 10.
Yeah.
So, yeah, agreed. Never tease the Giants. They can get they're going to lose by 3, or they're going to get blown out.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I agree with that.
too many games where they get blown out.
Yeah. All right. The late afternoon games, the Raiders at the Rams. This is Rams -5.5, and it shot up to 7 because of the Devontae Adams news. It's kind of
That makes
strange.
no sense.
Yeah, very strange because Devontae Adams wasn't even going to play. now the Rams went 1.5 points up through one key number and to another key number just because of the news that a guy who wasn't going to play is not going to play. Like this doesn't make any sense. I think this line's way too high. Like the Rams are not a good team, and I kind of want to not bet these awful teams. Like the Patriots and the Raiders. It just feels like they make dumb mistakes every week and just feel like you pay the price. But the Rams are also a bad team, and so I know Cooper Kupp might be back, but like is he going to be limited? I don't know. But I feel like the Raiders should be able to move the ball in the Rams. The Rams can't tackle at all. Their defense is horrendous. Even without Devontae Adams, like they still have Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker. And Brock Bowers has an amazing matchup here. The Rams are so bad against tight ends. I feel like Bowers is going to go off. I feel like the Raiders can even run the ball a little bit here. I do think the Rams are going to be able to score too. I think this might be like almost a shootout, really, which is kind of crazy considering how like banged up these teams are offensively. But this line's just way too high. I'm going to be on the Raiders. What do you think?
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell, I would not use shootout in the same sentence in a game that he's starting quarterback. So
fair enough.
That I don't know if this game's going to be a shootout. McVay off a bye has not been good. So last year they were off a bye. He came back. They were down. They ended up winning a game against Seattle 17-16. The year before, and 2 years ago and 3 years ago, he lost outright. So McVay has not been good off the bye. It's worth noting that last year they went into the bye. I think they were 3-6. And they came out and ended up finishing after the bye 7-1 and making the playoffs. And now, of course, 1-4, a chance to go into the bye, get healthy. And this line definitely assumes Kupp is playing. It assumes that they're getting some guys back on the offensive line. Their defense has been really bad. I was surprised when I really looked at the numbers and saw that how low down they were defensively. But is Aiden O'Connell good enough to take advantage of a bad defense? So the answer to that is probably not. If Minshew was playing, I'd be a little bit more comfortable on the Raiders. And I don't understand why this line is what it is. I would have made this line 4, maybe 4.5. There is no home field advantage. There will be absolutely more Raiders fans in LA this week than Rams fans. So certainly can't give any points for home field advantage. I was surprised to see the line running, and I would be on the Raiders probably for that reason.
Yeah, I will correct myself here. So I said shootout. My projected score for this game is 24-23. So I don't know if that constitutes a shootout, but like between these teams, maybe it's a low bar here for offensive output. All right, so next game is we have the Panthers at the Redskins here. So I feel like this is an awful spot for Washington because like they just they put their hearts into that Baltimore game. They came up short. Now they're big favorites against Carolina. Reminds me of week 2 or actually week 3, but when the Bengals were coming off that Chiefs loss, they put everything into that game, and then they were huge favorites. That happened one other time this year. I can't remember what happened. I think it was Seattle against Detroit, where they played a tough game as underdogs, and then they were huge favorites against the Giants the next week. They were flat. I don't know what to call these situations, but generally teams have trouble covering these spreads, and Washington's defense is not good. So 7.5 feels like the back door is wide open. However, I can't bring myself to bet Carolina because like their defense is so brutal. Like they're dead last in like almost everything. Their pressure rate, like they're not getting any pressure on the quarterback. I found this amusing. They're dead last in pressure rate, but they're 5th in blitz rate. So like they're sending extra pass rushers, but yet they're still not getting to the quarterback at all. So it's just exposing the secondary, which is already bad. So you have the number 1 offense and number 32 defense. It's just feels like such a big mismatch here. But like I said, I feel like this could be a backdoor cover because Washington's defense not good either. I'm going to pass on this game. Do you have any interest in betting this one?
Yeah, I'm on Washington again.
Okay.
I'm going to continue betting this team. I knew I was going to be on this team a few weeks ago. I had a suspicion they were going to lose last week. I couldn't get off the 6.5. Obviously, they lost by 7. They didn't get into the back door because they kicked that late field goal. Coming off of a loss, I think this team now will respond. They were impressive in defeat, and I certainly, there could have been a case last week where trailing, especially by double digits, that Jaden Daniels would have been forced to throw the ball more or forced to throw the ball and create turnovers, create mistakes, and he didn't. Once again, they converted every 4th down. So they're moving the ball. They're putting up points. In Carolina, you mentioned the number 32 ranked rushing. They've given up the 9th most points through 6 games in the Super Bowl era. So their defense has been historically bad. They can run the football, and Washington, obviously, defensively is not very good. So that will lead to potentially them putting up 21, 23, 24 points. The back door was open last week, potentially, for Carolina, and they threw Dalton threw a terrible pick that he airmailed to the sidelines. Just telegraphed to the sidelines. They can run the ball, but if they're down 10, 14 points, Dalton's going to have to throw the ball. And we saw what happened with Washington when they had a big lead against Cleveland. They put their foot on the gas. They did the same thing against Arizona. I think they're putting up 34, 35, 38, maybe 40-plus points in this game, and I think they're going to cover relatively easily. I could see this game being a 17 to 21-point game, and then maybe Carolina somewhere coming in late with a score. But I think Carolina turns back to Bryce Young at some point soon because I think their season's over. They're now 1-4, 1-5. Their season's done. Dalton gave them that initial bounce, and now they're just not getting anywhere. They're not a good team. They had 10 penalties last week. They're not buttoned up defensively. I don't like the fact that Washington's in these unfamiliar waters where they're laying 7+. But they've proven this year that they can win the games by double digits, and they keep their foot on the gas. They're aggressive, and I think this is one of those get-right spots where they continue to showcase what Jaden Daniels can do, buying in and putting up 30+, and if they put up 30+, I'm comfortable laying anything under 9.5, 10 points. Under 10 is good enough for me.
Is this in super contest consideration for you?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
And I usually don't lay those kinds of points in contest play, but I don't have a lot of games this week that I like, at least not right now with lines where they are. We'll see what lines move, where we can get some stale value. We'll see some injury reports, but I feel very good with Washington. I've been on them pretty much throughout the year. They're 4-1 against the spread. Of course, last week counted as a push, so I'll consider it 4-2 from a contest perspective. They lost. Carolina's 1-5 against the spread. The only game they covered was the game they upset the Raiders. Otherwise, every single game they've played, they've lost by double digits. All their losses, 5 for 5, have been by 10 or more points. Mm-hmm. So I see no reason why a loss here would be within 10. Therefore, I'm on Washington.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just maybe it's just sticker shock of seeing the spread at 7.5. Like before the season, you never would have thought this would be 7.5. But I think you could argue that it's even shy of what it should be. And I agree that Bryce Young.
That's a great point. Before the season, I'm looking here at the Westgate. This line was 3.5. Yeah. Now, Carolina, you could argue, is worse than what you thought. Maybe they're the same. I mean, I personally thought Carolina was the worst team in the league coming in. I know I bet under 5.5 wins for the season. I know there were a lot of people on the over at 4.5 when it opened. As soon as I got to 5.5, I got it back the other way. And I thought they were at the bottom of the league. I know they made a lot of upgrades, but I figured Bryce Young is just not. Bryce Young and me are the same size, and I'm not. I can't. You wouldn't be able to see over the line of scrimmage. So the guy doesn't have the arm strength to throw the ball outside the numbers. So I figured even with the upgrades throughout the team, with the offensive line, with the weapons, that team's going to win 3 or 4 games. So before the season, this line was 3.5. This line is only up now 3-4 points. Not enough. Washington is way better than what we thought. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Washington over 8.5 wins, and we said they're probably going to win against Cleveland. We know they're going to lose against Baltimore. They're going to come back. They're going to win this week. They're going to win next week. And we said that line was going to go up to probably 9.5, if not higher. That line is now 9.5 with like minus 70 to the over. So it's exactly it was actually more than what I thought. I think if they win the next 2 games, that number is going to go up to 10.5. I took Washington a few weeks ago plus 310 to win the division. And now I think it's like plus 140 or plus 160, somewhere in that ballpark, pretty close to Philly. Philly's a slight favorite to win the division right now. I just continue to love this Washington team. I love what I'm seeing from them. Defense is not playing great, but they have a lot of home winnable games throughout the year, and I think this is a blowout win. And for anybody left in Survivor, this is your Survivor pick of the week.
Yeah, it's either them or if you want to be daring, Jacksonville, perhaps. Probably safer to take Washington, or if you have Buffalo, I guess. Anyway, next game is Chiefs at the 49ers. Niners are favored by 1, which I think would surprise most people. The public money is on the Chiefs, so public dog here for Kansas City. It's kind of weird to see this line be 49ers -1 because the spread has been juiced toward Kansas City off Andy Reid bye weeks. Like Andy Reid has such a great record off a bye, and like generally you have to pay such a premium for the Chiefs, but that's not the case this time. And I guess maybe it's because the Niners are also coming off extra rest, but still, just feels like Andy Reid usually has a great advantage here, and that's kind of what's keeping me really off the Niners, because I think the Niners match up really well against the Chiefs because the Chiefs can't stop tight ends and they can't stop receiver 2s. And that's where the Niners dominate. They have George Kittle and they have 2 number 1 receivers. So they can really match up well against the Chiefs. Whereas the Niners, I feel like they can defend the Chiefs' strengths well. Like the Niners are really good against slot receivers, where you have Juju Smith-Schuster going off last time, and they're really good against tight ends. So they can stop Travis Kelce. And the Chiefs don't really have much else going on. The Niners at their weakest defending pass-catching running backs, like Kareem Hunt's not going to beat San Francisco. So I like the matchups here for San Francisco. I just worry about Andy Reid off a bye. So I'm not sure if I'm going to quite get to San Francisco as like more than a small bet or something. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so on paper, the Niners they have the matchup advantages, especially with McCaffrey in the Super Bowl. They should have won the Super Bowl twice. That's the biased Niner fan in me. Now, we talked about before off bye weeks, right? Kansas City off a bye and a win. Not a great spot. You talked about Andy Reid's record off bye. It's historically great. Last 3 years, not so great. Last year, off a bye, they lost to Philadelphia, 21-17, I think it was. 2 years ago, off a bye, they needed overtime as a double-digit favorite to beat the Titans. So that was not a good performance. The year before that, they beat Denver, but Denver really beat themselves, and they only put up 22 points on offense in that game. So the last 3 seasons, Andy Reid off a bye, the offense has not been good. Now, taking you back to the Niners side, this team just doesn't finish drives. They're a little better. I think last week I said they were 30th or 29th in the league in red zone. They went 3 for 5, so that's 60%. Now they're 25th in the league in red zone performance. They love kicking short field goals. They have this new kicker, Matt Wright, who may have gotten hurt. They signed Anders Carlson to the practice squad today. Anders Carlson was cut by Green Bay. He missed 5 extra points last year. That's not the person that I am excited about as far as hearing kickers with Shanahan, who loves kicking. The Niners haven't finished games. They obviously blew the game against Arizona. They blew the game against the Rams. No excuses in those 2 games. And last week, all of a sudden, it was a 5-point game. They had a big lead. The game was basically over. Keep your foot on the gas, move the ball. Purdy's playing unbelievable, but they're not finishing games. They're not defending in the secondary. And then the last, forget Andy Reid, bye weeks, matchups. What's Mahomes' record as an underdog? if you're betting against Mahomes as an underdog, you're not winning long term. So the way I look at this, unbiased, is Mahomes as a dog. Give me Mahomes. And if I take Mahomes as an underdog every single time for the rest of his career, whatever it is, 10 times, 20 times over the next whatever many years he plays, if you go back to Brady's career and say, well, I wish I bet Brady every time he was a dog, or I wish I bet Peyton Manning every time he was a dog, I think the Chiefs are going to end up being favored in this game. I think this line is now down to 1. I saw 1.5, and then I saw it back down to 1. Now I'm seeing, again, 1 at circa 1.5 Westgate. Wouldn't surprise me if money came in on Kansas City, pushing them towards the favorite, which would maybe work to the Niners' favor because teams that flop to the favorite don't win. But Mahomes is a dog. That's the way to look. For me, it would be Kansas City or pass. And unfortunately for my Niners, I don't have a lot of hopes. I think they'll be ahead. I think they'll have a chance. And then for some reason, they'll kick a late field goal, and Mahomes will do what he normally does, lead a game-winning drive, or have the ball late down, up 3, up 4, and just being able to run out the clock with whomever he's throwing, whether it's Kareem Hunt, Juju Smith-Schuster. Mahomes will find a way, Justin Watson, he'll find a way to keep the chains moving and keep the Niners off the field. They won't have a chance late in the game. No comfort level betting against Mahomes, especially when he's getting points.
Yeah, I wanna my last sentence I wrote here echoes what you said here. Let's say I won't be betting this game, or I have a type here, this game, because I worry about Kyle Shanahan choking in a big game. Plus, doing so requires Mahomes to lose outright. But the 49ers seem like the right play, so maybe they don't seem like the right play. I don't know. I love the matchups, but you're right. Like, you have to beat Mahomes to win this bet, and that just might be too much to ask. So, yeah, this is a tough one for me. Are you considering this for the Super Contest?
I highlighted Chiefs just because they're dogs, and anytime I have them on the right side of my column, they automatically get highlighted. But
okay.
I listen. I take the bias out when I'm playing contest picks. I'm very happy to play on or against the Niners, and take my rooting interest out. I have no confidence in the Niners winning this game. I think the Niners will be ahead, and then I think Mahomes will take the lead. I don't. If the Niners are ahead against Seattle and against the Rams and against the Cardinals, what makes me believe that they're going to be able to hold a lead against Kansas City? By the way, Kansas City's defense is legit. Yeah. The Niners played Seattle, the Rams, and Arizona. Those defenses are terrible. They're bad to terrible. Kansas City has a top 5 defense in the league. I don't know what the numbers say, but to me, Kansas City's defense, their coaching, they're on the line, is a top defense in football. And I don't have confidence in the Niners' ability to stop Mahomes if the Niners are ahead. And I don't have the confidence in them to get Mahomes off the field if they need to get the ball back late in the game. Mahomes really, like Brady in his heyday, if they need a 4-minute drive, they're going to get that 4-minute drive. And the comment that just popped up, if you like San Francisco, you're betting them in the first half because they're not coming back and coming back and winning this game. If they're going to win this game, they're going to be up at halftime. And if they're up at halftime, that's where you look to bet the Chiefs, getting real points, getting 3.5, getting 4.5. Maybe a little bit more live or at halftime.
Yeah. I think you're right. I bet them in the first half, if anything. The Chiefs, you asked about their defensive EPA, they're 5th. So you're right on point there. Top 5 defense in the NFL. So speaking of good defenses here, Jets at the Steelers, the Sunday night game. The Steelers were favored by 1.5 before the Devontae Adams trade. Now they are underdogs by 1.5. So I actually, this may sound strange. No, I obviously like the Jets more long-term with Devontae Adams, and I was glad that we bet that over 7.5 wins last night. Thanks for the heads up about that. And I will say, I asked you about the Steelers, they're over under because we were waiting for a 9.5. And I saw on FanDuel it's still 8.5, but on DraftKings it's actually 9.5. I'm actually going to look at the vig here in a second. It was actually it's under 9.5 minus 135. So I wanted to ask you if you like that. But as far as this game is concerned, so like I said, I was saying, like, this may sound strange because long term I like the Jets more with Adams, but for this game alone, I worry about there might be some distractions or something like that. Like I don't know. It felt like after a loss like that on national TV, it felt like the Jets might come back and play with a great effort, like kind of like they did. After the loss to the Niners, week 2, they went into Tennessee and won. I expected a similar performance just because of desperation, but I think that like the Devontae Adams trade might overhype them a little bit and like give them more confidence that they should have, like than a 2-4 team coming up a loss on national TV. So I worry about that. Plus, like now the Steelers are underdogs, and you always want to bet Tomlin as a dog. So I put this down like for maybe a couple units on the Jets before the trade, and now I'm not sure if I want to bet the game. It just feels like there are too many variables going on here, especially with the Steelers benching Justin Fields for Russell Wilson as well. I hate Russell Wilson, but anytime you have like short term, anytime you have like a benching that could cause like some, some weird things to happen. So I'm off this game currently. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I would recommend you get back on it because I love the Jets in this game, and I love the Jets for a lot of reasons. Obviously, coming off the loss on national TV is a week where the team now needs to refocus. Devontae doesn't help the offensive line. He doesn't make the defense tackle better. He's not going to make them avoid penalties. But Mike Williams has been really, really bad. And you can tell after that game, Rodgers called him out directly. Kind of, Mike Williams ran the wrong route. He was supposed to run, Rodgers said, to the red line. And Ryan Clark explained exactly what he was referring to. So clearly, Mike Williams and Rodgers have not been on the same page. So he's going to be gone. They're going to be very, very difficult to defend. Rodgers has that chemistry with Devontae, that quick passing game, the red zone. It'll certainly boost the red zone. And the Jets defense has been excellent. So now coming off that loss, now the season's on the line. I didn't like the Jets as much last week. I was on Buffalo. That was my last ranked game of all the games. And frankly, throughout the game, I was actually betting the Jets because I thought that from what I was seeing, I thought the Jets would win and probably should have won that game. So now you have the Jets off of a loss in a real must-win backs against the wall situation. Flip side, Pittsburgh's off a win. I hate Pittsburgh off a win. Yeah. Tomlin has a dog, but Tomlin, I mean, it's a 1-point spread. So it's really pick your winner. Pittsburgh did not win that game last week by the score that it suggests. They got very lucky to win that game by 20. They should have won the game, but they shouldn't have won that game 32-13. So Fields can't throw the ball downfield. Fields has been terrible throwing the ball. And by the way, Fields has in his NFL career, we talked about Josh Allen with 71 wins and 51 of 71 being by 7+. Fields has 14 wins in his career. Okay, not a lot, 14 wins over, let's say, 2.5 years, whatever he's played, maybe 3 years. In every single one of his wins, 14 out of 14, the opponent has scored 20 or fewer points. So I think the Jets get to 20. And I think the Jets probably get a little bit more than 20. I'm not suggesting the Jets offense all of a sudden is world beaters and they're going to put up 35 a game, especially against Pittsburgh's defense in a night game. It could be cold, it could be windy, it could be rain. But Pittsburgh's offense just terrible. And the Jets defense is going to show up in this game. Now, the downgrade, or I call it a downgrade to Russell Wilson. I can't stand Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson has no talent. I've been betting against Russell Wilson for about 5 years. I love when Denver picked him up and he went against Seattle that first week. If you remember back week 1, I think it was like 3 years ago, Russell Wilson was favored by 5 or 6 on the road. And I loved Seattle in that game. We pounded Seattle in that game. They won easily. Russell Wilson has been a downward spiral since. He can't run. He's got no mobility. He has no mobility within the pocket. He can't throw the ball deep. He throws the ball 3 to 5 yards checkdowns. I could see him throwing the ball into the ground, being rushed and pressured. If they move to Wilson, which seems like they're looking to do, and maybe this is because Tomlin kind of guaranteed him the spot in the summertime, and Tomlin's a man of his word. I don't know exactly. I've read a couple of reports as to why they're making this change. I don't think the Steelers team is going to like that. I think the Steelers are 4-2. Fields has not been good, but he's been running very well. He's been getting touchdowns. He's creating opportunities in the red zone. He's making plays with his legs. He brings a whole new dimension to the team that Russell Wilson can't sniff. Neither of them could throw the ball, but at least Fields can move around, especially against a team that's going to rush him, put pressure on him. I really like the Jets. If they go to Wilson in this game, I think the Jets should be favored by at least a field goal, if not maybe 3.5 there, I say. I would want no part of Pittsburgh whatsoever with Russell Wilson at quarterback. So I like the Jets. To answer your question on under 9.5, I already took the Jets over 7.5. So for me, it's like double dipping on that. And I like the Jets over 7.5 better than Pittsburgh under 9.5. If Pittsburgh wins this game, which, of course, they certainly can win this game, and they play the Giants next week, they're favored next week against the Giants. I said I would wait for the bye. And at the bye week, that's where I'm playing under. Because in their last 9 games, probably 6 or 7 of those games are much tougher games, maybe more depending on how Cleveland, and maybe they make a shift to Jameis Winston at some point. So I like the Pittsburgh win total under at the bye week. I wouldn't do it this week. I would rather, if you like Pittsburgh under now, I would rather take the Jets over now, because even with a Jet loss, I believe they will still go over 7.5 wins. I think the Jets still a 9, maybe a 10 win team, assuming they're healthy. Rodgers obviously getting beaten up a little bit, but I like the Jets. I think the Jets are the right play in this game. I'm not surprised the line moved to where it is now. And if, dare I say, Fields is removed from the starting lineup, there's going to be another 1.5 to 2.5 points of value. So you will see Russell Wilson is not an NFL quarterback anymore.
Yeah, maybe I'm overthinking this one. I was kind of remembering that a couple weeks ago, Dallas went into Pittsburgh and won. And safe to say that the Jets are a lot better than Dallas. Not only did Dallas win at Pittsburgh, they outgained the Steelers by 220 yards. They just had bad luck in the red zone, which the Jets did as well last night. So maybe that's not saying much, but still, maybe because like before the trade, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be on the Jets, and then I thought like, oh, maybe they're going to be on focus. But I think you're right. Like they're 2-4. They have to get going here. And I do think that the quarterback swap might have a negative impact as well. And I agree that Russell Wilson is just horrible. By the way, it's kind of sad that the Steelers are underdogs now, because Tomlin as a favorite after a win of 2 or more touchdowns, 14 plus points, is 9-23 against the spread in his career. So pretty brutal. So after I finished my 5-hour meal deal, I'm voting for Casey Thompson. Yeah, she's very great. Thanks for sponsoring us. Actually, it's a negative ad, but anyway. So we have 2 Monday night games, which is always exciting. I love the DraftKings 2-game slate here. So we have Ravens at the Buccaneers. I'm curious about your line on this game, because obviously you make your own lines. I do too. I could not get the 3.5 at all. My personal spread was Baltimore -2. The EPA numbers say Tampa should be favored by 2. I think the Ravens are overrated. They look great the past 4 weeks on the scoreboard, but they have a lot of flaws. They can't cover on the outside. They can't cover outside receivers. They can't cover the middle of the field. They struggle to pass protect, and they really haven't been exposed. Like the type of opponents they've had, just been weak against the run for the most part. Tampa's strong against the run. They Vita Vea. I feel like they could slow down Derrick Henry, and they're going to force Lamar Jackson to throw, and they blitz a lot, so it could give Jackson some problems here. And then on the other side, they have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin against that secondary, which is not very good. So I think Tampa plus 3.5 looks pretty good to me. What are your thoughts on this one?
I wish I agreed, because I would say a year ago and prior to that, I would have always been on the home team, Monday Night Football, getting 3.5 points. But I do not agree about the Ravens being overrated. I agree that they do have some flaws, certainly in the secondary. They certainly have some flaws on their offensive line. I bumped the Ravens by 1.5 last week because I need to avoid betting against the Ravens. So I manually adjusted this team. They are my number 1 team in the league. As far as matchups go, Baltimore offense, number 1 yards per play. They're number 1 rushing. They're number 3 passing. They're the number 1 team on third downs, converting over 50%. They're the only team in the league converting over 50%. And they're number 1, tied with Houston, at 75% conversion rate, getting touchdowns in the red zone. This team is a machine on offense. When Lamar is playing the way he's playing, and they have Henry, who just picks up steam as the game goes on, it's very, very hard to stop this team. Now, Washington, not a good defense. Washington played a lot of man. In the Buffalo game, Buffalo opened that game playing also a lot of man, which I kept saying was ridiculous. Tampa's going to play zone. They're going to play the Tampa 2. They're going to drop Levante David into coverage, which is probably the right move. And really the only way to defend Lamar is keeping that middle linebacker somewhere near the line of scrimmage as a spy. So definitely, and Vita Vea, of course, has an ability to stop the run. But it seems like every single team that's at the bottom of the league in rush defense has played the Ravens because of what they just continue to do week in, week out. So I just don't want to get in front of this team. So my numbers, I have Tampa Bay as an average team. I have them number 14 right now, which is basically a 0. I have them just ahead of Seattle, Dallas, Pittsburgh, and Atlanta. Like I said, I have Baltimore at a plus 7.5, which makes this line over a field goal. Makes this line about 4.5, 5. So Do I agree with my number being that high? I feel like that number when I wrote it down was a little high. When I saw that the opener was 4.5, or sorry, the look ahead was 4.5. The opener this week was 4. It got bet up immediately by professionals down to 3.5. And at 3.5, I would lean towards Baltimore. To me, Tampa Bay gave up a lot of yards a couple of weeks ago against Atlanta, almost 600 yards of offense against Atlanta. I would be very worried about Baltimore being able to move the ball the same way they've done against every other NFC team. I feel like every time we talk about Lamar against the NFC, his record is just absurd, and we laugh about it the week later. Where what is he now? 21-1, 20 and something crazy, where he just continues to dominate the NFC. So I would lean towards Baltimore. I wouldn't have a lot of confidence laying more than a field goal, but I like another over. I think there's going to be a lot of points. Seems to be a trend this week with me liking a lot of totals being higher. I think this game is way high. I could see both teams getting close to 30 points. I could see this game being very similar to the Bengals game a few weeks ago where the Bengals blew the game, but that game was 41-38. So I could see there being fireworks on Monday night. I could see this game being in the 60s, which is, I guess, what Tampa's been doing. Last week, they put up 50 points, a game in the high 70s. The week before that, a game at 66 points against Atlanta. I would take you want to ladder it. You play the over, you ladder the over, you play some alternate overs. I think both teams will put up points. I think both teams will have a lot of success. I'd like to see what happens with Mike Evans. For some reason, I saw before Mike Evans was limited. I have to take a look, make sure Mike Evans is playing. But I love the over, and I would lean towards Baltimore in a spread that I think feels a little light because I have Baltimore as my number one team in the league.
Okay, yeah, the metrics don't like Baltimore at all. They have Baltimore as the 11th best team in the NFL.
Which metrics are you referring to?
The EPA numbers.
EPA.
But they have so the problem for Baltimore here. I'm looking at the numbers. Baltimore's defense they have is 24th in the NFL. Number 2 offense, only behind Washington. Tampa Bay's offense 8th, and Tampa Bay's defense 13th. Whereas Baltimore's defense is just so bad. And I agree. I don't like Baltimore's defense at all. Like it feels like they've had some easy matchups except for Washington. Washington moved the ball well on them, despite not having the starting running back. So yeah, I do like Tampa here to cover the 3.5, especially with the hook. I like that all. I like that a lot.
I'm looking at yards per play. I like yards per play. Nice, simple, and yards per play offense. Baltimore 6.9. The next number 2, the Niners 6.5.
Yeah.
Rushing, Baltimore 5.9. The next highest is 5.3. In the passing game, yards per pass, like I said, they're number 3 at 8.6. Only Detroit at 9 and Niners at 8.8 are higher. Washington is 8.3. They're number 4. I looked at before the red zone, the conversion percentage for third downs. They're the only team over 50%. They're tied with Houston, like I said, at 75% in the red zone. PFF, if you're looking at PFF grades overall, PFF has Baltimore number 2 at a 90. Only Detroit at 90.6 is higher. Their offense is number 1 at an 86.3. Niners at 86.2 would be second. Defensively, PFF has Baltimore ranked 6th. So I don't know. I mean, I look simply at yards per play. I try not to look as much at the defense because obviously they've been up in some of these games, and Dallas was blown out, and then Dallas had a bunch of backdoor and a lot of yards late. The Cincinnati game, certainly they gave up a lot of yards. So I agree with you that their secondary is weak, and Tampa should be able to put up points, which is why I love the over. Now, what is the over-under in this game? Let's take a quick look at the over-under in this game.
It's 48.5.
48.5. That is – now I have said to you before, my trick on night games is to wait for the game to start or right before the game starts, play the half under. And as the first quarter progresses, you can always get that back over because the public will bet the over late. But it's now early in the week. I would bet that over now. I would bet that over much sooner rather than later. Opened at 47. It's now 48.5. That's the first Monday night game. There's going to be a lot of bets on that over. I would get that over now and write down 48.5. It's not a key number. You're crossing that 47. But before that line gets to 50, I think this is going to be a game that goes into the 60s. I love the over in this game.
I for totals, I kind of like try to guess what it's going to be. And I thought 51 was going to be the number we saw, like 27-24. It just makes sense. 51.
That was your number, 27-24?
Yeah. So I thought that's what we'd see as far as the
I wrote
total is concerned.
34-28.
Okay, yeah. So, well, no, that's not my prediction. That's what I had for just in my head for the total. For my predicted score. Oh no, it was 27. It was 27-24 Buccaneers. Yeah, I think 51 is what the total should be. So I agree that I would go over. So yeah. So someone asked, where do you find the EPA numbers? Nathan asked. So RBSDM, I put in the comments here. Sounds like a porn site, but I promise you it's not. You can find all the numbers there, offense, defense, and quarterbacks, and you can adjust. You can do a lot of adjustments there, as you can see on the left-hand column, and then you can download everything to Excel. It's a pretty cool site. All right, so last game of the Week 7 slate, we have the second Monday night game, the Chargers at the Cardinals. So I would have been a lot more excited about fading the Cardinals had they won last week. Obviously, they didn't. They got blown out. It just feels like Kyler Murray is just so up and down. Like whenever they get blown out, like he tends to play pretty well the next week. And then if they win, they tend to have a letdown. Like we saw that last week against San Francisco.
Twice already.
Right, yeah. So this Cardinal team is just such a roller coaster. So coming off a blowout loss like that, it kind of makes me want to take Arizona. But I just think the Chargers is such a more complete team here, and they're just better coach. Jim Harbaugh is just a great coach. So I do like Jonathan Gannon, but still, like Harbaugh is just an elite head coach. So I'm under a field goal. I'm going to take the Chargers. If this were 3, I think about Arizona. If there's a 3.5, I'd definitely be on Arizona. So it's like that close. So. At plus 2.5, or minus 2.5, I'll be on the Chargers. So what do you think?
I don't have a strong opinion here on this one because I don't trust my numbers for either of these teams. My numbers make this game Arizona -1.
Okay.
I think these teams are very comparable. I like the spot for Arizona coming off a blowout loss where they played outdoors in the rain, where everything went wrong. Penalties. I think they had 13 penalties last week. They had 3 turnovers. They were -3 in turnovers. The Chargers seem to go to sleep. I don't trust the Chargers as a good team. I think the Chargers are a team that has played against poor competition so far. They haven't really – it's almost as if Harbaugh is holding Herbert back. Certainly they've had guys injured throughout the early part of the season, so hard to really take away from a lot of their games. But I have not been overly impressed with the Chargers yet. Right now I have the Chargers at 24, and I'm probably too low on them. Actually, I have the Chargers and Cardinals basically tied. Cardinals, Colts, Chargers, to me, I all have -2. So I have them as a below average team. But I don't trust my numbers. So I would have made Arizona -1. They were pick 'em on the look ahead, which to me made a little bit more sense. And now all of a sudden, because Arizona got blown out and the Chargers, let's be fair, they blew out Denver. That game was over before the fourth quarter. And all of a sudden, now the line on the road is 2.5 with the Cardinals, with the spot being for Arizona. So I don't have a strong opinion. I'd like to watch this game. Also, I want to pay attention to the injury report. Harrison banged up with a concussion. A few other guys got banged up. Sean Murphy Bunting got hurt last week. A few other guys got hurt. The right guard is still out on Arizona. So not really sure what to make of some of these injuries. But if they start adding up and you start getting cluster injuries, then maybe they have some sort of an impact. But I like Arizona to win off of the bad loss that they've had last week. But I don't have any strong opinion. I'm absolutely not considering playing this game in any fashion.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that there is such line movement here. I actually had the advanced spread down as Arizona -1. I guess I was looking at the wrong numbers. But still, it's like a 2.5-point line movement or 3.5-point line movement just seems wrong just based off that blowout loss against the Packer team. I think that's one of the better teams in the NFL. So I don't think that reaction's warranted. And I do have you said you have Arizona -1 as your number. I have Chargers -1 as my number. So we both agree that this line's a little too high. But like I said, if this were 3 or 3.5, I think I'd definitely be on Arizona at that point. So we'll see where the line moves. Hopefully we get some good line value. Latin McCrap of the Chargers sucks. Cardinals offense much more difficult to stop than Broncos. That's absolutely correct. But Kyler Murray does have these weird instances. We also had one last question. What are the odds the Chargers make it to the AFC final? I don't know the odds that they get there, but to win the AFC championship, they're 30-1 right now. So looks like a big number, but I don't think I'd necessarily bet it. There's too many good teams in the AFC. It's pretty top heavy. So, all right, I guess that's about it. Do you have any, Evan? Do you have any final thoughts or anything?
No, I really don't expect the books to have the week they had last week again, where every single favorite now won. I'm waiting to see. I did hear earlier this week from some people that I trust that some of those lines were kind of initially taken out. We talked about, the Bucks, which you're on, opened at 4.5, 4, and was immediately bet down. The Giants at 4 was immediately bet down. So I don't think the professional bettors buy either what happened last week. I think they're going right back to the well with the home underdogs, the way they've always done in the past. Certainly, it's been a very weird season thus far. A lot of weeks where a 6-point favorite can't win a game at all, and now all of a sudden favorites can't lose, and the games weren't even competitive last week. So I do expect a regression to the mean. I absolutely do not think that favorites will continue covering at a 55% clip. I certainly don't think road favorites will continue covering at a 70% clip. So I wouldn't overreact to a couple of games last week, and we'll see. Maybe it's parity. Maybe the league it doesn't have as much parity. Maybe the league is so top heavy, and I think you wrote about this in some of your column about just get away from these bad teams. But the truth is, if you think back historically, betting on some of these bad teams is the way to make money, right? They're going to cover. The line is what it is for a reason. The question is, how high do you need to make Carolina? How high do you need to make New England? Where does Cleveland need to be priced right now? So it's like anything else, like buying a stock. I mean, these prices are where they are. I just wonder how much the books have adjusted for what they've seen recently. I do think you're going to see totals really going up. I think what we saw last night with the refs was a joke. And I think you're going to see a call from the league to get rid of some of these ridiculous roughing the passer penalties, some of these ridiculous illegal formation. Every single time there's a big play, all of a sudden there's a flag. How many illegal formations have you seen this year? I get it. There's a way to line up. You have to have the tight end has to be covered, the end of the line. But at the same time, we're calling back some of these massive plays. There's holdings, there's PI. So I think you're going to see a little bit more towards letting the players play, which I think will lead more towards scoring because it is very difficult to play defense in this league. So I would not overreact to close it out to what we saw last week. Stay consistent with the handicapping, and I think all will regress. I think we'll get some more underdogs this week than we got in the last week or two.
Sue's asking, do you have an opinion on Texas versus Georgia?
I happen to really enjoy watching college football. I know enough to live bet the games, but going into the game, I like Texas. I have not been impressed with Carson Beck. I was actually telling a friend of mine today, a Raider fan, who's thinking about which quarterback he's going to draft. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be coming out there. It's one bust after another. I know I'm not the draft guru. I know you have Charlie on the site who really knows the draft a lot better. You certainly know the draft a lot better, but I can tell you, Carson Beck, bust. Shador Sanders, bust. Who else is going to be a bust that's up there at the top of the list? Now I'm drawing a blank on some of these
Jalen Milroe.
Jalen Milroe, I love him in college. He's going to be a colossal bust in the NFL.
Yeah.
But I like Texas. Texas is a good team. Texas is fun to watch. Georgia's also good. I really enjoyed that Ohio State Oregon game last week. That was a fun game. You know who I love in college is Vanderbilt. I continue to bet this Vanderbilt team because I watched this Diego Pavia last year on New Mexico State, and I just thought he was a gamer. He was one of those guys and just kind of, he played in some of the lower schools. And then I see him playing against some of these bigger teams and these bigger schools. And, of course, they beat Alabama. So 2 weeks ago, I bet them plus 23 against Alabama, really only because Alabama was coming off the win to Georgia. So just a situation, I'm like, okay, I'm taking Vanderbilt at plus 23, and they won outright. I was live betting them throughout the game. This week, I was on Vanderbilt again, plus 13.5 against Kentucky. Someone just made a comeback, Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers is another bust. Arch Manning, not a bust. Arch Manning in 2 years will be an hopeful. I think he will be another great Manning quarterback. But Quinn Ewers, not an NFL quarterback. Milroe, not an NFL quarterback. Beck. But it's fun. The college game is a lot of fun. It's a totally different game than the NFL. It's played at a completely different speed. Cam Ward might be interesting. Cam Ward, the quarterback from Miami, might be an interesting guy. I did enjoy a couple weeks ago. They had a major 30-point deficit, come back So he's been a real gamer, although I think he's a little slow. And he kind of runs around a little bit too much, tries to make plays with his legs. Does that in the NFL, he's not going to last long. So I haven't seen anybody. Last year, I loved Jaden Daniels. I happened to also 2 years ago, really enjoyed watching Caleb Williams. I thought coming out, both of those guys would be really good. So far, we'll see. I thought Bo Nix would be a bust. I think Spencer Rattler will be a bust. Alabama, Tennessee should be a fun game. I think I like Alabama in that game. I don't know what the line is, but I like Alabama to win that game. I'm not impressed with Tennessee or their quarterback. So, but from a college perspective, college is a lot of fun, but it's totally different game than the NFL. So
yeah, Alabama -3 at Tennessee. I'm leaning toward Alabama there. I like Texas as well.
What's the Texas line?
I think it's Texas -3.5. I think.
Where's that game?
In Texas.
Texas -3.5 in Texas. That's an interesting number.
Yeah. So my college picks will be up tomorrow, at some point tomorrow. So yeah, we'll see that. And I agree. I think there will be regressions to the mean, although there's like a 1% of me or 0.001%. Like I'm thinking like by like week or by like Thanksgiving, there's gonna be like they're gonna interview some guy who become a billionaire like overnight. They're like, how'd you make all this money? And it's like some college kid. He's like, dude, I just parlayed all the favorites every week, and I just made billions. I just wonder if that's going to happen. But I agree. I think
it's not that easy. It's not that easy. It's like, I love craps. You go to Vegas, you go to the craps table. There's always somebody new at the craps table who has no idea how to play, right? And maybe you get a hot run. Most of the time, you don't get a hot run. But I can always picture these young kids who are coming to play craps for the first time. You get a hot shooter. 10, 15 minutes, somebody's coming in betting $25, on random numbers. They're hitting right and left. There's no 7 for like 10 minutes. Person makes, a couple $1,000 in a few minutes, and they walk around, and I turn to a friend or someone else at the table. It's like, that person's going to lose a lot of money playing craps. And you see, wow, look how easy this game is. There's no way to lose. There's no 7s. It's such a greater percentage. Every other number is going to come out, and those people are going to go broke real quick. So if you're betting favorites at the rate of 70%, if you're parlaying money line favorites, you're not going to win a long time, which is not possible.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not sure about 3.5 in college football. I've not done enough research into that. But yeah, 3.5 in the NFL is treacherous. But I don't know. I'll look into it, and I'll let you guys know next time. So yeah, Evan, thank you so much for joining the show once again. Just really love it when you're on the show. So and thanks for everyone for commenting and watching. Really appreciate it. Thanks especially to John Sanders for the 411 super chat. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. All that will be appreciated. And we'll be back tomorrow with Kenny. Kenny's going to make his triumphant return from the hurricane. So going to be interested to see how he fared after that. So looking forward to talking to him about fantasy. Going to do a fantasy deep dive tomorrow, talk about all the games from last week and answer any fantasy questions. So if you have any fantasy questions, just save them for tomorrow night. But yeah, thanks guys once again, and I will talk to you tomorrow.